John, you and I have gotten a lot of advice from experts about how husbands and wives can have a happier, healthier marriage. And often Gene will say, have you learned anything today? But I'm always looking for those golden nuggets, those ideas that kind of stand out and maybe challenge my preconceived notions a little bit, to stay concentrating on the everyday things that make your love better, you know?
And that's what I love about this little book that you've compiled, Jim. It's not 10 ways that you can celebrate in Italy. It's 365 ways that you can help your marriage today. And we're going to now hear a conversation you had with Greg and Erin Smalley, in which, and your wife Jean too, yes, I should mention, in which you explored some of these ideas, which I think is eminently practical and applicable for all of us.
One key theme that we want to address is the importance of nurturing your marriage. I think that's probably the number one thing. Would everybody agree here?
Yeah.
Nurturing your
Absolutely.
relationship and your marriage. And Greg, I understand your dad, Gary, first of all, he stole all your materials,
Right.
what you told me.
Right.
All the good
Yes.
books that he wrote, multi-million.
They were my
best-
ideas. Even at 10, I had some good wisdom around marriage.
Yeah, that's plagiarism. We should have been able to tell Gary that. But you said he would officiate weddings from time to time. I'm sure it was a privilege for married couples to get married by Gary Smalley.
Yeah.
But he had a packet of seeds he would carry in his
All the
pocket
time.
for that. But what was that story like?
Yeah, I even watched him do this and thought, what a great idea. So the very first time I ever officiated a wedding, I'm like, I'm going to do what Dad did. I'm going to have the seed packets. The idea is I held up the bride's bouquet to everyone, this beautiful bouquet, and said, look how mature flowers are. Look at the colors. Like, this is the marriage that these two are dreaming about. But I said, guys, today, again, I learned this from watching my dad. Today, you're starting off as seeds. So how do you go from these seeds to nurturing your marriage so that it looks like these gorgeous, mature flowers? And I was just going to give a few points, connect them to some element of growing, flowers. Like I said, Christ has to be the cornerstone of your marriage.
That's good.
That's like sunlight to these flowers. And I talked about something else. I said that's like water to these flowers. And then I was going to make this last point, which is 10 minutes a day of this inner life, deeper emotional communication. And I could not, for the life of me, remember what element of growing flowers. So I'm just like the Statue of Liberty, just holding these flowers going, well, the flowers need stuff like, and I couldn't come up with it. And so I just went, finally, something popped into my brain. And I just went with it. I didn't think about it. I just wanted out of this stupid analogy. I'm like, thanks a lot, Dad. And so I said, yeah, this 10 minutes a day, this deep conversation, that's like fertilizer. So I said to them, you two need to spend at least 10 minutes a day fertilizing each other. And I didn't hear what that might have insinuated.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Well,
so
look
I
at the
did.
idea.
Roar of
Yeah.
laughter.
Fertilizing the relationship.
Yes.
Yeah,
Through nurturing and doing
Growing it.
Well, in Ephesians 5:29 it says to cherish and nourish. The word nourish in the Greek actually means to tend to, like you would a garden. So it's just saying we've got to grow not only each other but our marriage as well. It's our vows that we take to have and to hold. To hold means to nurture, to grow. And so it's like you were saying, we've got to keep thinking about how we do that then throughout the course
it's so good.
of our marriage.
All right, this is going to be a little different because you're going to turn the tables on Gene and I, and you're going to ask us questions too. We're going to ask you questions
Absolutely.
all around this devotional, this marriage devotional. But go ahead,
Yeah.
fire away.
Well, the first one is something that Aaron and I have never heard applied to marriage. And so when we read it, we went, wow, it actually is quite brilliant. So you talk about the second law of thermodynamics, which is about entropy, deterioration
Exactly
over
right.
time.
Yeah.
And that really does apply to marriage. So help us to better understand
Now,
how
you
does
know,
that law apply?
There's so many things that apply to that, really. Dr. Dobson used to use that about managing focus on the family, this idea of entropy. If you don't put energy into it, things decline.
That's right.
And that's certainly true of our marriage. I mean, if we don't put the effort into it, it's not going to magically happen.
Yeah. Mhm.
We're not going to get a bouquet of flowers without tilling, planting, fertilizing. So it's the same kind of concept, just keeping the energy in there. And I think a lot of marriages struggle, and we've struggled from time to time with that, where we're busy and we're not putting in the effort.
Yeah.
And it just kind of coasts, right? And you use that analogy too in terms of the drift. That's part of the exceptional marriage content that you guys have talked about, that idea of drifting.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of applying it. Of course, I'm married to a scientist, so I have to come up with these scientific
It was brilliant.
means.
Yes.
I think
Gene,
we're
well done.
experiencing the breakdown of the second rule of thermodynamics, and Gene goes, I know exactly what you mean by that.
That's it.
Yeah, I was like, well, there must be a first and a third. I don't know what
ask
any
me.
of them are.
Do
Yeah.
not ask me what those are, but I like the second one. It keeps me motivated.
Yeah. Well, we see a lot of couples that we talk to, work with, they end up administrating their marriage almost to death. Like instead of nurturing, right? They're having like a perpetual business meeting.
Yeah, and no one gets married to have a perpetual business meeting.
No.
Or the other thing I hear is we'll worry about our marriage later. We're so busy with everyday things and kids and on, and I always say there's no autopilot. We have to pay attention to this marriage and nurture it and grow it and be intentional about that.
Yeah. No, it's good. And what do you think, Gene?
No, I agree. Life happens, especially when you have young children in the home.
Yeah.
You really don't have enough hours in the day, and you are both exhausted at night or trying to get up a little early to talk. But what we're talking about is it doesn't take that much time.
Right.
And you're right, to even start with good morning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That-
just investing in little ways.
That takes 3 seconds before launching into the to-do list.
Yeah.
Or even spending 5 minutes or the 10 minutes is really helpful. But for someone like me, at that time, that busy time of life, that's too overwhelming to do that every day.
Yeah.
And then I feel guilt and shame. But just try twice a week. Start with twice a week. Some connection time that isn't going through the to-do list or what
Budget.
Yes,
Yeah,
or
that's
the
good.
kids or the
You've done that really well, I think. Later in our marriage, particularly, we've made more time for those conversations and things, which is
well, but it gets easier as the kids get older.
That's
and
true.
There is more space.
We've seen
and
the
time.
enemy of marriage and they're little. That is the bottom line.
That is true. Hey, we did a survey. You guys participated in that, obviously, about couples who've been married for several decades. And they talked about the secrets of a happy marriage.
Yeah.
So what do you think some of those were? You probably you looked at the homework already, but what did you see in that survey?
Yeah. Well, just off the top of my mind, when I looked at the list, I think what really stands out to me is just the importance of having fun together and kind of cultivating that friendip.
I knew that one would stand out too because that's his love language for sure.
Well, I always tell
Having fun?
Aaron,
Having fun or practical jokes.
Okay. I didn't know that was one of the 5.
just having, just
No, it's not.
enjoying
Notice.
like each other.
Yeah,
I always
yeah.
tell Erin, I know that she loves me, like she made that commitment. I like it better when she says that she likes me over loving me.
Oh, that's good.
Because that implies to me that we have a connection and a deep friendship. And that's when I think about marriage, especially for, we've been married 32 years. So when I think about 40 and 50 and 60, 70, maybe even 80, maybe. It's possible.
maybe.
But just
That's
to
what you
enjoy
want
each
to
other
answer.
I want her to be my best friend.
Yeah.
And that requires that we nurture that relationship. But that's the one that really stood out for me.
Yeah, versus communication, of course, was on the list.
Right.
That seems to always make the list. But it's not just communicating about, like we were talking about earlier, business stuff or conflict happens spontaneously or just small talk, facts. But really being intentional again about going under the waterline and going to that heart connection, the deeper emotional connection. And we have to be intentional about that. It doesn't happen spontaneously.
Yeah, that's
Aaron
good.
keeps a feelings wheel at our dinner table.
Oh, I have one in the drawer next to our dinner table.
Yes. It came out with the foster kids. I think we
Yes.
did that originally.
Good.
with
Yeah.
the foster
Good.
It comes
There's
out with
something
Quickly it
valuable.
turned
Yes.
on me.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait, I'm gonna bring the pillow home from my
My
office
goodness.
and
So
keep
she'll
that
say,
right at the
give me
table.
3 feeling words. So I'll look at the list. Sexy is one of the things on the list. So I go there
You
first.
sit down to dinner and she goes, "Are we having a happy face dinner tonight?" Yes, it's happy face.
Yes.
That's funny. Some of the others don't hold grudges. I mean, I guess we're kind of gravitating toward the ones that mean something to us. But don't hold grudges is a good one. I think we have done that reasonably well. Probably better in the second half of our marriage than the first half.
Absolutely. And, I think a lot of it is you can choose to think positively about your spouse.
Yeah.
And that's brain
Is that a hard
science.
choice?
Well,
No, I'm with
in
you.
general, I'm speaking for others.
Okay,
It
yes.
can
We have
be.
For Greg and Aaron.
Right. Or the listener, or the watcher. Those seasons in life where it's busy and you're stressed and you're tired and you don't have much bandwidth, relational bandwidth. But there is a lot of research to support if you can only find one thing positive to think about your spouse, think about that.
Yeah.
Thank God for that aspect of your spouse, and it's an upward spiral. If you think more positively about your spouse, you're going to begin feeling more positively.
You're speaking from conviction. I'm a little worried.
It's the third law
read
of
this. I've read
thermodynamics.
about this
Notice the
somewhere.
No, that's fun.
But it helps.
That's
It
good.
does.
The other couple that I'll just quickly mention, we'll move on, is your love will change. Kind of that acknowledgement. For me, that's like expectations.
Yeah.
I'm kind of tough on that. I mean, I tend to have expectations, and then they get dashed, and then I get sour.
Yeah.
I get into a mood.
Yeah.
And, because what I thought would happen isn't happening,
Right.
whatever. And I've tried to become more mature in that way.
Yes.
But just kind of take the deep breath and say, okay, maybe I need to work on me, not on Gene. And that's a good place to go. And the other one, support your spouse, which I think is really important. I think when you feel supported, you're a much better spouse,
Yeah.
right?
Well, on that one, what was really interesting is I was reading Ephesians 5:25 through 27, which it starts off to husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. So it's that obvious, okay, to sacrifice for her. But then it goes on to talk about helping to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing of the water, presenting her as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle. Like when I first saw those words, I've never connected with them. Like I've just run by that.
Yeah.
Right.
But when I started to study it the other day, and what was really cool, it's exactly that. It's about supporting. It's encouraging husbands as Christ presented the church, his bride, holy and blameless, without stain, all of that. What he was saying is that he is investing in her to help her become the best self, like who God created her, like lifting her up so that she can ultimately be unleashed, because that's what Christ ultimately did with the church, the Great Commission, go out and make disciples. And that's what I love about that thought of supporting Aaron is going, I think, Jim, it's at the end of our life as a husband, it's almost we have to be able to ask ourselves, was Aaron better off because they married us?
Ooh, that's a tough,
Right?
I mean, that's a tough
And
question,
it's
a
fair,
good
though.
question.
How am I supporting her to help her become the best who God created her to be, so that God can unleash her, versus doing things, saying things that keep
Yeah,
her
that's
so
good.
buried under all this negativity.
What's good about that, it gives you a compass.
Yeah.
I think especially for guys, it's not aimless. Then you know what you're trying to go for
Yeah.
at the end of your life. You want to be able to answer that.
I just never saw
positively.
that out of
Yeah,
that
it's
verse.
good.
Like those words didn't make sense to
right
me,
there,
but
huh?
That's what it's
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's only fair that I get to ask you, Aaron,
Okay.
about how you and Greg learned to deal with unmet expectations in your marriage. We all have them, but we
Yes.
don't necessarily tell our spouse. So how have you guys worked through your
Yeah.
different expectations?
We've had lots of them.
Right.
'Cause
Great practice opportunities.
We all come into marriage based on what we experienced growing up from our family of origin with those expectations. It's going to go like that. But often we don't talk about it. We don't communicate about it. So then they're unrealistic expectations. I even think about, I don't think you thought of this, but mowing the lawn. So I expected, because my dad mowed the lawn, I thought Greg would mow the lawn.
Right.
And it was this battle that I would end up doing it because he's like, I don't care about the lawn. So I would mow the lawn, but I would be so upset, like just pushing the mower. And finally we hired someone to mow the lawn, and that was our win-win.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I don't, whatever I had bad allergies, so just
Right.
mowing the lawn, I just suffer
Yeah.
after doing that. There's all those. I remember one time Aaron was out with some girlfriends, and so I was with the kids. It was just one of those times nothing went right, and I finally get him down, and I'm at the kitchen table doing some work, and Aaron walks in, and she walks right by our kitchen sink, and I can see her, and I notice that she looks at the sink. I'm like, because had she looked at the other direction, she would have seen all the laundry that I folded, but she notices the dishes I forgot to do. And so she yells out, "What am I, the maid?" And just starts doing the dishes. And it so offended me that I was working. And so I just remember thinking, the nerve, like you've been out partying with your friend. Like what?
I've
Why
been
would
home
you
working
not even
hard.
say hello? Like had you asked me, hello, how's your night? I would have said how horrible your children are and what they did. And it was the expectation that I had that when she comes back, especially if a fun night with the gals, that she'll greet me first, not like notice what didn't get done. And now, so thankfully I didn't say anything. And
you're
I kind of
smart.
calmed down. I even said later on, "Hey, did you mean like the whole maid thing towards me?" She's like, "No, I knew that you had some work to do. I told our kids you got to do the dishes. They didn't. I was frustrated with them. Thank the Lord, because I would have probably said some snarky thing. We would have been in some big fight.
Yes.
Right.
And so it is just being aware of what are those expectations, and then letting Aaron know, for me, the expectation is when you come home that we greet each other first, not just jump into businessy kind of stuff. And then she gets to decide, is that realistic or not?
Yeah.
And we can navigate through that and figure out something that feels good to both of us. But it's most of us don't even know it's those expectations that are unspoken that drive even a lot of our conflict.
Right.
Can happen from
Yeah.
that. So I love that you guys are so honest within the book and tell a lot of your stories. So I know that you guys approach life very differently. And in the book, you've given a good example of how this has showed up many times within your marriage. So what happened?
One thing, Kenny Chapman, who's on the cover with us, Kenny does a great job. He writes the scripts for our 90-second commentary.
Right.
So a lot of these things came from that 90-second commentary that Kenny has heard my stories, and we've talked about many things. I think we've done over 1,000 of those commentaries.
That's impressive.
So Kenny really gets the credit for compiling these things, and he does such a good job. I want to make sure he gets that recognition.
Thank you,
But
Kenny.
one of the stories that I talked about is kind of, it's one of the more challenging stories. We've had fun talking about the lighthearted stuff, but Jean and her family had a tragedy. Their brother passed away many years ago. But I can remember, my thing has always been, as an orphan kid, let's go. We got to go. We got to pick up ourselves and go. We can't sit here.
Yeah.
And I would say upon reflection of that, partly due to my uncomfortableness with that, I don't like to sit there. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me to be
is it just the emotions or just dwelling on
I think
the
it's my
negative?
emotional challenge, to be honest with you, to why sit there and think about something terrible. I'm not a good mourner.
Gotcha.
If I could say it that
Yeah.
way. I want to go.
Yeah.
And that probably is not healthy. I get it. But it's just the mechanism that I developed as a child, losing my mom, losing my dad. And so the story goes. And I remember after a few weeks, I'm even thinking of the timing of this. How do I, because she was in not a good place. She was just mourning the loss of her
Yeah,
brother.
a lot of grief. Yeah.
And at some point, I was like, okay. I remember being in the kitchen. I know exactly where we were standing. And I said, we got to pick up now. We got to get moving.
Gotta
It's
move
time to
on.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it was weeks, not months, certainly not years. I mean, so the timing may have been way too early for me to be talking about this. But I did raise that question. And probably the scariest thing I ever heard from Jean in our marriage was the words that she spoke back to me, which is, you know what, Jim? Not everybody's wired like you. I can't do that. I've got to sit here. and mourn this
Yeah.
for a while. And the scary part was, I don't know that I can do that. Not that I was thinking of leaving. It wasn't that kind of thing, but I'm not equipped to sit here with you. I've got to go.
Yeah.
And I had to really think about how to do that.
Yeah.
So it was great learning, but it was also, a pretty good failure on making sure I was everything she needed. So I don't know if you want to fill in any gaps, but
In the end, it ended up really growing us, and that was my first brother who took his life, and it was devastating for me.
On
Yeah,
every
of
level.
course.
Yeah.
But because of all of this, I got into Christian therapy and started going, and that really helped me with not only mourn, but understand myself better. And then the therapist wanted Jim to come in and join. So we ended up doing really marriage counseling, and she helped walk us through that. And that was so helpful just for me individually, for Jim individually, for us as a couple.
That's what's so powerful. I think there was a similar epiphany within our marriage, as well as that when Erin would get emotional, I would always tell her, hey, you know what? You got to calm down here. You need to relax.
Oh,
Those are
that's
such
effective.
Yes, right. Those are the words not to
Yeah.
ever say.
And as that would lead then to other discussions, very spirited discussions. But what I started realizing was the same thing that you talked about. I was wanting her to relax and calm down because I was uncomfortable with the emotions. I didn't know what to do with
Where to
mine
go.
or with hers.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. I had to then learn, what does just compassion look like? Like, how can I show up and not feel like I need to solve how you felt?
Yeah, and so often we think we need to know these things, or we come into marriage knowing these things, versus we can learn and grow continuously. And, how to manage conflict well, how to communicate well, how to sit in someone's pain with them. We can learn how to do that and grow.
yeah, that's so good. So good.
Well, some tender moments there from our guests, and some laughter as well, as we heard from Jim and Jean Daly and Greg and Erin Smalley talking about marriage, reviewing the content of a book Jim has compiled called The Healthy Marriage Devotional, 365 Daily Inspirations to Bring You Closer Together. We're making that available for a gift of any amount today, so call 1-800, the letter A, and the word family, or check the program description for how to donate and get the book.
John, I'm so proud of Jean. She just, she gets so nervous. She's more introverted, and she just got, she gets nervous coming on the program.
Well, you're being very public about a very private relationship.
And, it's just so sweet to have her. And, of course, Greg and Erin, who walk in every day here at Focus thinking marriage and how many couples we can help get through a crisis. And here at the year end, we need to hear from you. I hope you can become part of the ministry if you haven't donated to Focus, or if it's been a while since you've donated to Focus. Step into this with us. Let's help more couples do better in their marriage. Let's save marriages. That's the goal, and be a great witness to the rest of the culture as to what Christian marriages are all about. So I hope you can stand in the gap with us.
So donate today as you can, either a monthly pledge, if you're able to, or a one-time gift of any amount. We'll send the book to you. Again, our number 800, the letter A in the word family, or check the program description for all the details. On behalf of the entire team, thanks for watching Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back as we continue the conversation and once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.